And the big news that we're tracking at DD India News Hour, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh has been assassinated in Iran's Tehran. In a statement, Hamas mourned the death of Haniyeh, who it said was killed in a treacherous Zionist raid on his residence in Tehran, unquote. The Revolutionary Guards confirmed that the residence of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran was struck in this morning, resulting in his and one of his bodyguards' death. Revolutionary Guards of Iran said the cause is under investigation and will be announced soon. Hamas officials termed it as a grave escalation, saying the assassination of Haniyeh will not achieve its goals. The Hamas chief attended Iran's new president's swearing-in ceremony on Tuesday. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has said that he does not think that war is inevitable in the Middle East. He added that if Israel is attacked, the U.S. will help defend Israel.
We certainly will help defend Israel. You saw us do that in April. You expect to see us do that again. But we don't want to see any of that. And we're going to work hard to make sure that we're doing things to help take the temperature down and address issues through diplomatic means.
Meanwhile, Israel Defense Forces said that top Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr was killed in an Israeli strike in southern Lebanon on Tuesday. Israeli military spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said Shukr was responsible for the death of 12 children in Masht al-Shams in Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. He said Fuad is the right-hand Hezbollah Secretary General Nasrallah and was his advisor for wartime operations.
The IDF carried out a targeted strike in Beirut on Shukr, also known as Shukr, was the right-hand man to Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's leader, and his advisor in planning and directing attacks and operations. Shukr was the man responsible for the Masht al-Shams massacre, in which 12 children were murdered. The IDF will not tolerate terrorist attack on Israeli civilians.
And about the implications of the assassination of Hamas chief, joining me is Professor Kinvara Jangid, head of Israel Studies Center at Jindal Global University. Good afternoon and welcome, sir. Also, DD India correspondent Sarah Coates is live from Tel Aviv. Sarah, let me come to you first. Hamas is saying Israel was behind the raid that killed its leader, Ismail Haniyeh. What is the latest on the Israeli response?
Still no comment or claim of responsibility from the Israelis, and we're really not expecting to get one anytime soon. What we can tell you is that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he will hold a security assessment in the coming hours. Now, we have heard from the IDF's Home Front Command. It put out a statement saying that there right now has been no change in the directive to the Israeli public, but it will update people if this changes at all. Now, also do know that airspace about an hour from where I am, north this way, it has been closed until at least the end of the day, and the military will continue to reassess this. Now, we have also heard from the supreme leader in Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He's just spoken out saying that Israel has brought the severest punishment on itself with the assassination of on our land. Now, we are also hearing reports that Israel has stepped up security and diplomatic missions around the world, although there has been comment from Israel's foreign ministry on that, coming at an extremely sensitive time. And this is why we're seeing so many diplomatic efforts, intensive diplomatic efforts, to really try and bring this situation under control in a bid to an all-out regional war.
Exactly. The sensitive time that is, how does the killing of Hamas chief threaten to derail the ceasefire talks in Gaza?
Certainly makes this far more difficult. We do, of course, know that Ismail Haniyeh, he was head of Hamas's Politburo. He was very active in these talks, seen as a representative, of course, of Hamas. But when it comes to these talks, these negotiations, have been going on now for months and months, really not getting anywhere, just stumbling blocks in these talks. So certainly will make this deal much more difficult. But really what we're looking at now is the potential for escalation in the region. Iran is vowing to respond. We're also hearing condemnation from Turkey, from Russia, from China, of course, Iran as well. So it is a very dangerous time in the region. And this is why we've heard from the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin speaking out from the Philippines. He says Israel has the right to defend itself, adding that the United States will assist Israel if it is attacked. Now, once again, this is just a matter of hours ago. It is still a developing story. We know that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he will continue to hold assessments throughout the day. And once again, the directive for the Israeli public has not changed. Certainly the IDF, the Home Front Command, will instruct Israelis if there are any incoming threats and they do need to get to shelter. But right now, on the ground here in Israel, it is basically business as usual.
Okay, Sarah, thank you for those updates. Sir Jahangir, at a time when the entire region of West Asia appears to be on the edge, your take on what could Ismail Haniyeh's assassination could mean for the conflict?
Well, it would certainly mean a very serious amount of worries for a number of players. But I think it must have surprised in the aftermath of the visit that the Netanyahu had in America. He just came back and he kept saying that he is willing to have a ceasefire deal. It seems like he was saying this more for the sake of saying, and this act of, let's say, targeted assassination, as and when Israel will confirm, seems like an act which will not show any sign of de-escalation or any amount of ceasefire. Now, the Israeli public would not be very thrilled with it, because in Israel for a number of weeks and months, people have been coming out more for the sake of release of their hostages and recovery of the lived or the dead bodies. What does this act do by the Israeli leadership is that it ups the conflict. It just makes the conflict far more lethal coming weeks and months. Already Israel was dealing with a situation in the north with Lebanon, but this planned activity around the movement of Ismail Haniyeh and other leaders, we don't know how many they are tracking, it seems like Israel is going to really continue fighting in Gaza or around the places in the Middle East, rather than looking out for a compromise deal with Hamas. So this really should worry countries like India, because India has been really asking for some amount of restraint on the part of the Israeli leadership.
Right, and given that the assassination took place on Iranian soil, how does that complicate the entire conflict? I mean, could it also draw Iran into a more direct conflict with Israel?
I don't think Iran will have a direct conflict with Israel. I think
we appear to be having some network issue. We are connected with Prasar Bharati.
To continue attacking Israel.
Yes, please go on, sir.
I personally think that the Palestinian issue has never been a very significant issue for the Iran to have a full-scale war with Israel. They make a good rhetoric and an excuse out of the Palestinian issue, but they don't really mean much beyond a certain amount of rhetorics against Israel and America in the name of the Palestinian issue. So Ismail Haniyeh's assassination will again be an event forgotten soon. And Iran will just continue fighting Israel with its proxies, but not pick up a direct fight with Israel on this issue.
Okay, and just to understand what kind of a setback it is for the Hamas, how does Haniyeh's killing, what does it mean for Hamas leadership? How does its political and military leadership differ?
That's a very interesting aspect, and I'm very glad you asked that because Ismail Haniyeh is more of a moderate. Now, there is nothing moderate in the larger scheme of things in the Hamas's ideology. Hamas is a very religious, fanatic, jihadist organization to a certain extent. It also has certain people who are more into nationalist liberation, spirit of the Palestinian issue. But Hamas has not really, come out clear on the two-state solution. Hamas has not accepted the state of Israel and the two-state solution. Ismail Haniyeh was the possible person who would have done that in his last 5 years. In fact, it's a known thing that when the October 7th attack was carried out, Ismail Haniyeh and Khalid Mashal were not in the loop. The October 7th planning was done by this military commander, Yahya Sinwar, and Sinwar became a very independent political actor, which in a way disagreed with Haniyeh and Khalid Mashal, who used to and who still live outside of Gaza. So in a way, there was an internal fight between a more militaristic and more fanatic struggle that Yahya Sinwar represents, and Haniyeh and Khalid Mashal were seen moderating forces within the Hamas's, inner world. So the assassination of Haniyeh will push Hamas more into the hands of Yahya Sinwar. And of course, Yahya Sinwar now will have less excuse to make a compromise and hostage deal with Israel, and he would have more ammunition to galvanize people and continue fighting a religiously minded war with Israel.
Right.
So yes.
Right. Professor Jahangir, also the question that I posed to our correspondent Sarah Coates earlier, not that much progress was made as far as Gaza ceasefire negotiations is concerned, but how does this development push it even further?
Well, frankly, it's a deal that Hamas did not want, and it's a deal that Netanyahu did not want. The rest of the world wanted this deal very much. The rest of the world and Joe Biden, including Indian leaders, have been asking for a ceasefire deal. But Hamas doesn't want a deal. Hamas wants the war to continue. It earns two things. A, Israel is getting more and more delegitimized. And second, Hamas has miraculously escaped a complete, defeat by the Israeli army. I mean, it has been 9 months that the Israeli army is inside the Gaza, and the Israeli army hasn't really found tail of the tunnels. They found lots of tunnels, miles of them, but they haven't found the tail of it, which means Yahya Sinwar is still under the ground in Gaza somewhere. He also has more than 100 hostages somewhere under the ground of Gaza. And Israeli army has really, really failed in rescuing them by force. So Hamas, in a way, sat quiet. The prolonging of the war gives them more leverage in terms of showing to the rest of the world that Israel is really the evil state, quote unquote. And Netanyahu, on the other hand, is also a person who did not see end of the war in his political favor. Remember, he would lose a great amount of his political standing when the war is over and there is an inquiry about how did Israel miss the October 7th attack. So in order to avoid that moment of hard truth, he wants the war to keep going on. So for him, a maximalist position is something that he has been very candidly about. You quoted Daniel Hagari, the spokesperson of IDF. A month back, he said it on the national television that winning the war in Gaza through military is not possible, and claiming total victory in Gaza or against Hamas is like throwing sand into the face of the Israeli people.
And Professor Jahangir, given the time, I also learned that you've lived in Tel Aviv, lived and taught in Tel Aviv till recently. I'm curious to learn about your first-hand account of What you observed since the October 7th attack and the conflict as it has snowballed since then?
Well, I don't know how much time you have for that, but yes, I just
if you
came
could
back
brief,
to
sir.
after 4 years. And on October 7th, I was in Israel, and I worked and I continue to work on a project for Ben Gurion University, which is in the south, in the city of Beersheba. And personally, October 7th was a hard day for me. One of my very close acquaintances, a professor who visited Sonipat, who taught in Sonipat for a seminar, he lost his daughter and son-in-law on October 7th while being on a phone with them. And Professor Ilan Tron is a close friend for over a decade. So I personally knew many people who lost their loved ones. Many of the students of the Ben Gurion University were abducted. In fact, 2 of them were released in the last rescue by the Israeli army. So October 7th was a very hard moment. And then there were sirens for a month. I mean, every day it used to be a scary night and day where I had to run to the shelter house in 60 seconds whenever the siren blows. As an outsider, I think what I felt and what I did not see outside in the world is the loss of lives and the suffering of the Israeli common people in kibbutz. Kibbutz are very, very egalitarian, progressive, largely inhabited by the left, progressive Israelis. I knew one of them, Vivian Silver, who launched a very massive movement for a decade called Women Wage Peace. She was killed on a So I think it's the suffering of the people and a perpetual conflict that you could see, and one could just wonder how will this violence ever end.
Yes, that is a profound question. But Professor Jahangir, thank you very much for joining us on the news, sharing your perspective.